minimize this. All right, greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is February 25th, 2021, and we have our open lines night tonight. So we're going to be doing open lines all night. Well, not all night, but probably the next couple hours. We're going to be doing open lines, chatting with you guys in the chat. We've got some pretty interesting stuff going on in the world and some pretty interesting news. I guess Jared Murphy is also with us. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Remember, it is open line, so whatever you want to talk about is on the table. Just go into the chat box and hit that comment or whatever it is that you want to talk about, and let's get talking about it. Jared, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's so fun to be back at our open line. All we can do now is ask everybody to... Oh, yeah. Why? There's a commercial for our episode.
Oh, well, you can watch the commercial. I can't watch the commercial because it's my IP address, but you can watch it because you're a guest. So I guess if you get a commercial, watch it because that's always the best way to support the show and doesn't cost you anything. Unless it's like a 2-minute long commercial or something, of course, skip it. I wouldn't stand for that either. But normally when I'm watching YouTube channels that I enjoy, I'll watch the commercials. I won't skip them. I'll hit play, and then if I see a commercial or something, it's a channel I like, I'll get up, go get a drink or whatever, and whatever. I'll just let it play.
Yeah.
So Ivan is in here. Don M. I see Even Syntax or Evan. Pablo Zulugja. Maybe you can pronunciate that for me in the chat box. And Not Aliens is in here. So, Jared, we had a big week this week with this whole Mars thing. Did you watch that?
Okay, to be fair, no. So, I know we talked about it pre-show. My frustration with, to be a poopy pants right out of the gate, my problem with what we're getting is there's no way that any of the feeds are live. We are getting filtered information. We're not seeing raw footage. There's no way. Yeah, just bounce everything back to the planet. Let everybody watch it. There's no way. Just not happening.
Yeah, well, Timbo Rice, I guess, he just posted a comment. He says, Mars landing was totally fake. No way we can control RC vehicles from millions of miles away in real time. And what do you think, Jared? Do you think it's fake? Have you seen any of the videos or any of these images? It's pretty amazing, really. The way I understood the rovers, I don't know how this helicopter's going to work, but the way I understood the rover is that they move so slow that they'll put in a command for it to move a couple feet or something, and then they have to wait. It's not like like they're watching the video and controlling it while they're moving around. Like it takes them a seriously long time to move this thing like just 10 feet.
Yeah, for all you youngsters out there, moving that rover is exactly what it was like entering any command on a Commodore 64 computer. So let me tell you what it was like to play a video game, if you want to call it that, and you load the wrong file. Anyway, you were lucky to get to your play time, I'll tell you that. So yeah, same thing with these rovers. There's nothing's being sent in real. It's like they're sitting with a joystick and moving this thing around. They're carefully moving it, slowly but surely.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty awesome if we could sit there like on the screen and move it around in real time as we kind of following it around. But I think it takes a lot longer to move, I think, than what he's thinking here. Ivan says, I was wondering if you or Jared have heard of studies done by the Russians where they were growing fruits and vegetables inside of pyramids made of PVC. Pretty amazing results. Have you heard anything about that, Jared? I sure haven't.
Yeah, early on in my research, I cannot remember the professor that was authorized for it, but they actually have The last number I had heard was like 263 or 267 pyramids, and they were experimenting with different kinds of it's not just PVC, it's other materials, heights, sizes, angles, and they're placing everything from people to animals to seeds to food, water, plants, you name it. And they've been experimenting with pyramid shapes and energy. The whole thing was there's all these theories around pyramids concentrating energy and having an effect, some sort of magnetic uh, effect on the total Carillion aurora around any particular thing. So they've been at it for a really long time, and it's really frustrating that a lot of that research, again, between the East and the West, it just doesn't get translated into English, and we don't get to hear about it more.
Then how come we don't have like a, when we see greenhouses, they're not pyramid shaped? Would it work the same?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons they were doing the experiments was to figure out, is this good for housing? Is it good for, well, there's that very famous case of that guy who built the scaled pyramid. Was it in Georgia? That guy, 20, 30 years ago, he built a scaled down pyramid, and they built it, and without any effort, it drew water instantly. And we can look it up, but I think it was Georgia. It was fascinating. They're like, how is this scale home, pyramid home, drawing what is now a lake around it? It's like, it's crazy. But the Russian pyramid experiment has been going on for a long, long time. It's Alexander. I think yeah, it's Alexander Golud. Is a Ukrainian scientist, actually, former defense contractor. He's focusing on pyramid research. Alexander, it's Golod. He's a Ukrainian scientist, and it's just been a long time. I found this research early on because you're trying to deconstruct what are the pyramids for, and he theorized that the pyramids, that energy that we were talking about, that it's of course both for us and for environment. So it looks like this one's, at least this entry says that he created 17 fiberglass pyramids throughout Russia. The tallest is 132 feet. He thinks that the ancient Egyptians had knowledge of power, and in part was, one of the reasons they built the Great Pyramid. But I actually want to find a picture quick, if you could bring it up, of that guy in the United States that built that. It was crazy that suddenly it just drew water out of the ground.
I suppose. I guess I could bring it up. What do I search for?
I'm looking for a pyramid house. I think it's Georgia.
Pyramid House in Georgia?
Yeah.
All right. And what are we looking for here?
You're not going to miss it. If we find it, I'll get the name of it. And right away it had water. This is it. It's Wadsworth, Illinois, the Golden Pyramid House. And there have been stories about that. One, people were fascinated just because it was an interesting house. But what was a total mystery, Wadsworth, Illinois. Let me know when you have it up.
Wadsworth?
Wadsworth. Yeah. But you want to do one that shows the full grounds around it. So they build the thing, and the next thing you know, it starts pulling up water, and it's now surrounded by a lake. That's it right there. No joke. That's it. That water
down.
came.
It burnt down. See it here?
What? Did it?
Yeah, you see the picture on the right here? It's like all burnt down.
Crazy.
But yeah, I mean, I see it here. Yeah.
That water was not pumped in. That water manifested after the pyramid was built.
Wait, the water around it?
Yes. Yep. The water kind of sprang to life after the pyramid was built. It's not runoff. It's not a flood. It wasn't flooded, and it never leaked. The water showed up, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I guess it's here. You can see the firefighters trying to put it out. It burnt down.
Well, it was quite an interesting. I mean, you can't have a high functioning pyramid. It's really nuts. It really is. Yes, Amanda, I agree with you. It is nuts because this is technology where if you have even a simplistic modern interpretation, and if it's functioning, Victor Schauberger at the turn of the century, I've talked about him, the naturalist, and really, I would say quantum philosopher, because he noticed things in nature that were that somebody photoshopped that in. There's no way that's there. Is that there
No,
really?
it looks like it looks like it's there, but it looks like it's a lot farther from the house. Here, there's that guy standing next to it in that picture there.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot farther
Uh,
from the house, so if you
All
get,
right.
you know what I mean, like if you take the picture
Yeah.
right, it looks like it's
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah. So the reason I'm bringing up Victor Schauberger is so he's running this forest in Austria. He's a guy who learned that vortexes, he got conscripted by the German socialists during the war. He was forced to work on technology, but prior to that, all of his work was on, like he figured out that stones were floating in the river and that log chutes would work even with water that was too low for floating logs down chutes. He was able to figure out that a tenth of a degree in the water made the difference of whether or not some of the properties of water are so bizarre. But anyway, there was a spring, and this is directly related to the pyramid. The spring that was in this section of the forest that they were maintaining had a small, it was like a house, but it was really a small shelter, and there was a natural spring there. Well, it had been there for hundreds of years and dated back into the Dark Ages, something to that effect. Anyway, they removed it and the spring dried up. And they were like, well, okay. Well, they built a shelter there again and the spring refed itself. And this goes into consciousness and water, but this pyramid, they build it and a lot of people are fascinated by it because, oh, hey, pyramid house, haha, and it looks like a pyramid, and somebody's really into the pyramids and all that. But then this water thing starts happening, and it's the same thing. It manifested all this water, and it was even theorized on a lot of TV shows. They're like, well, maybe the power plant, like the Christopher Dunn idea, the Giza power plant, that maybe it drew water, that it was one of the functions was to draw water from the earth as some sort of an aquifer energy point. So anyway, it's just a modern home. Can't tell you anything obviously about I don't know if they destroyed it or if it's a tourist thing still or what, but
Yeah, I see they've got a tarp over it here, so I'm pretty sure
is
that
that recent?
I don't know when this was. I guess I can click on the story. It was July of 2018.
I agree with Ivan, though. It is one of the weirdest, coolest things. There's so many things happening around the world that, whether because it's in the East, or I've had some friends just recently share some frustrations about if they're not on a VPN, when they go to do search results, they don't get the same thing if they're doing it locally here in the United States versus if they're, if they're looking, just trying to buy a product or something, and let alone if you're doing search, you're searching for history. This is just, yeah, Amanda, water pump. Ivan says one of the coolest things he's heard in a while, but I do agree. It's like,
Adonai, or Adonai, I guess. Adonai, if I would guess, it says, Jared, do you think the Egyptians built the pyramids or maybe an older civilization?
great question. And
I mean,
the answer is definitely.
whoever built them was from Egypt, right? So they were Egyptians, regardless whether it was the Egyptians were thinking, right?
I'm going to quote a very wise poem that was sung in the form of a song and say, is it Istanbul or Constantinople? It's been a long time gone, Constantinople.
Hey, you're gonna get me a copyright strike, man. Stop singing songs.
Wait, it's my interpretation, and that's how I'm feeling, like a unicorn, and I'm gonna sing. They might be giants, but no, that's a great question. So it's in Egypt. So if I was following up on the funny side, yeah, well, whoever built them in Egypt were probably Egyptians, right? But the problem with the pyramids is that there is, so specifically on the pyramids themselves, so we've talked about this a lot on our shows, and of course it's part of my book, is that the dynastic Egyptians found the pyramids, and not all of them, just found pyramids, found what we're calling temples and constructions, and then they adapted those constructions to their culture. And they didn't just do it for even the period we think of the Egyptians as going back 6,000-ish BC. Now we know from Solon, the Greek, that and so many things that the Greek, they prided themselves on being particular about what they learned. And the priests that introduced Solon to the idea of Atlantis and the idea of how old and young the Greeks are, even though the Greeks were very ancient, they were very young because they'd survived a catastrophe. The Egyptian the priests had said, look, we are also very old. We have a king's list, and it goes back 36,000 years. And so let's just say it does. And even if it doesn't, we have 6,000 years of repair work. So when everybody looks at the pyramids or has a question on it, one of the things that you want to do is look at the most oldest untouched up portions of the pyramid, or where they have the knobs, the polygonal constructions. Like yes, the casing stones are gone, but there are many, many casing surface pieces left. And they're in chunks, and they're actually in some Cairo museums. And my friend Jennifer Deo, the archaeologist, we've chatted in depth. It's very interesting. It's only about 8 to 9.5 inches thick. And so there is another finishing layer, but more importantly is the construction. You're looking at a single entity. Like, who built it requires you to say, well, there was nothing here. They cleared the land and they built it. Versus pyramid we just looked at Wandsworth, burned, and then they're going to repair it. Well, not only did the dynastic Egyptians maybe not use that structure right away, or they did and then didn't, or whenever they started to, it's been repaired and managed. And we assume that it was in an 80 period in the 1100s and newer, that there was it was, I think 800s is the earliest recording of the structure being quarried. But there's no way, when you look at the polygonal work, and then some people might know about geopolymers, and Dr. Joseph David Ovitz, the father of geopolymers, there's been there's a Egyptologist and a Yale scientist, not everywhere on the pyramid, but some of it was corrected or maybe fixed with pouring of what is basically what we call concrete, geopolymers. And so there's no way copper tools and chisels, or copper cylinders and tubes, or copper wheels with sand and grit dealt with the basalt, the andesites, the rose granites. The oldest structures are the most advanced in Egypt.
It's definitely really interesting, isn't it?
Start the reactor. Yeah, it is. It's super fun. And then you hear about something super contemporary like this house. I mean, I was obsessed with pyramid research. And for a while, I mean, like as a kid, you're like, oh my gosh, somebody built a pyramid. And then it makes a contemporary show on TV and a lake showed up. And it's like, okay, how did that happen? And then you have this, and thanks, was it Ivan that brought that up about the pyramid work in
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I think that work has never stopped. That Ukrainian work, Alexander Golod. I'm so sorry, I don't speak Ukrainian, but there are so many different versions. And this one, he's saying, fiberglass. I know they've done meditations. They've done, so Carillion photography is where they take a picture of your magnetic aurora, and you can do that with seeds. We've just started to talk a bit more about vibrational medicine, but these pyramids are super interesting because they did an experiment, a blind experiment. Well, I think it was a legit experiment, but they were taking criminals, career and people with longer sentences, and they were putting them in these pyramid structures for periods of time to read and rest, and they were seeing a drop in violence within the prison systems that they were experimenting with the prisoners taking time in the structure, there's a lot of experiments outside of food, basically, in a nutshell, with these uh, pyramids in, this Ukrainian.
I'd like to know why we haven't landed any rovers or helicopters since we have that technology apparently over where the face is. Was it Sardonia? Am I saying that right, guys? Sardonia? You
Wait,
know what I'm
in
talking
on
about?
Mars?
Yeah.
I thought gosh, I was talking to Richard Hoagland. I could have sworn that they clarified that image, the Mars face. Um, I think that's a problem with this early technology too. I get super excited about it when we get these photos back from these rovers or whatever, and I get super excited with the photos. And the problem is, I also like doing film and photography, so I also know what happens when you don't catch the light, and if you're doing it from miles away, you're really just asking to make some really super broad stroke interpretations, and it's sad. Like, we could argue that the face was blurred out intentionally, or was it a face? But I think I can look it up quick. I think they unmasking the face on Mars.
Sidonia, Amanda says.
Uh,
Yeah, but it's pretty cool. Anyway, Jared, if you could see the screen, I'm going
yeah,
to go ahead and let's play the. I brought up this video which I thought was pretty cool. Here's a paranormal. If you guys can see it on your screen here of the that was taken here recently. I guess it's pretty fascinating to look at this planet. I mean, it looks wet, doesn't it? Is it just me or does it look wet?
it does. There's definitely discoloration. There's definitely something. I can't imagine that's just burnt soil. There's no way.
Ew, I don't know, man. It's so interesting. These pictures that come in, and I guess here's a video of it landing here.
I did catch for a hot second. I caught it coming down, but I haven't watched the whole thing, so this will be cool.
Yeah, I guess they have a 30% speed and then a real time. I don't know why they would put those side by side, but anyway, while this is playing, Ivan says very cool. And hang on, I guess there's more to this. It's just there it is there. Well, that looks fake as hell, doesn't it? that did anyway. If y'all could see that. That definitely looked like something with the green screen there. Ivan says very cool. Timbo Rice says pyramids have some kind of power, whether it's spiritual or magnetic. In I'm sure is what I'm pretty sure he was wanting to say. I'm sure I look like a fool because he just explained this, haha. But yeah, geometry is cool, man. And then Ivan says I'm gonna have to start meditating inside a pyramid shape. That probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, well, and that's some of the experiments they've continued to do is on the meditation front. People with different mind or mental conditions, disabilities, you name it. They've continued to do a lot of experiments. Conscious water, back to that Victor Schauberger thing, or Dr. Emoto's work with the conscious water and the word. Same thing, same premises, and it hasn't stopped. And by the way, the weirdest thing is they can't determine yet if there's higher effectiveness or not, depending on if it's out of a material or particular material. So they're doing it out of these fiberglasses, but like they said, could you do it out of PVC with plants in your backyard? Could you do it out of concrete, or is it wood? Does it matter? It'd be an interesting experiment to repeat, and it's doable. You don't need to have. I don't think there's a minimum size.
All right, so if you could see the screen, it looks like that. I guess this is a video that is taking while it's coming closer and closer to the planet. It looks like that's the crater that they're going for. At least I'm thinking it was. It looks like it's going somewhere else now, but I thought that they were going into that crater, but it was supposed to be like an ancient lake bed. But I mean, that looks like it looks like a crater, caused by a meteor strike, not a lake bed. But I don't know. I guess they're landing right here, so they didn't land near that thing there, that crater. Where was that? Let me go back a little bit. All right, so maybe that was just a crater from like a meteor strike or something inside the giant lake bed that they were wanting to get into. That's kind of hard to tell, I suppose. But it's really cool.
It is.
Man, it certainly seems really dusty down there.
Yeah.
I guess it's lowering that thing down. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah,
Ivan says
I'm
Wim Hof
enthralled.
is something I'm trying out. Timbo says I'm going to swap my motor in my car with a granite and stainless steel pyramid. Should be capable of hitting 88 miles an hour with no carbon emissions.
Yeah, well, don't forget the lightning too, Timbo.
All right,
Yeah.
so I guess we'll move on from this pretty cool. I don't know. I just think the whole Mars thing is fascinating. Now, this is a story that just came out earlier today, and I think I shared it with you about the Gulfstream system is at its weakest in over a millennium. This is a theory, and I agree with this theory. I've been listening to, I guess there's a YouTube channel called Suspicious Observers, and what this guy says is what happens is as the Earth warms up, the melting Antarctic ice cools down the Gulf Stream, and as the Gulf Stream cools down, it really is going to make it cold as hell up here in the northern hemisphere for everybody else, and possibly cause another ice age. What do you think about that theory, Jared?
We've gone through our epochs, our epics, our disasters, our windows of solar flares and meteors and asteroids, and I think that this movement is definitely, we've been taking in data for a long time for us with modern technology, but in the drop of the bucket in reference to 4.5 plus billion years of the motions of our planet. So I don't think we're close to being experts. I mean, our lives, our societies just look at the Sumerians and the Greeks and the Romans and everything east and west. It's all societies have risen, built from great megalithic structures in the contemporary time periods, and they've not only have they been abandoned and lost, but they're buried in the jungle to the point that we need LiDAR scans, and we end up with 60,000 structures in Guatemala, right? So here's the jet stream changing, and they say that they're putting together models of what we've looked based on that article. They're looking at models in the last 1,000 years. I don't know. What do you think it's significant?
Well, I don't think it really matters.
I like to not worry you.
I don't think it doesn't really matter. I don't think what causes climate change, right? Or what's causing climate change. In all honesty, I think all the planets in the solar system are getting warmer. I mean, if I'm wrong, go ahead and tell me in the chat room if I'm wrong on that. I think all the planets are warming up. So regardless what side of the fence you're on, as far as, oh, well, we need to do this or we need to do that, I don't think it matters. I mean, the Ice Age happened long before we ever had cars or, fields and fields of cattle, to eat. That it's a constant changing Earth climate that we're a part of. Apparently, we're on Earth. Just because we're here and we're keeping track of this stuff doesn't mean that climate change is just going to stop because we're taking care of it, or we're recording it. You know what I'm saying? It's happening. So
yeah, well,
I mean, it's back and forth. There's always whatever. Okay, so now the ice age is going to come, and say all of Canada is covered in a glacier again. That's just and there's palm trees down on Antarctica again. Well, that just means that, oh, well, guess what? Now the current is warming up, right? So that's going to make the glaciers melt away, and it's going to,
Well,
cause the ice to
so
form in our, and then we're right back to that cycle again. I mean, and it happens, right? It's part of being on a planet.
yeah, and it was just pointed out. Oh boy, I'm sorry. Let me go back off the site. It was Timbo that brought up the Little Ice Age, which I was joking about the violins. We had that 300-year period that is responsible for the hardening of the trees that Stradivarius used to make violins, and nobody could ever figure out why the hell, forever trying to figure out how to make a Stradivarius. And the Little Ice Age was a cooling period that occurred after the medieval warming period. So the short, dumb answer for the Little Ice Age from Wikipedia is that the NASA Earth Observatory notes three particular cold intervals. One began in 1650, the other about 1770, last in 1850. And so this period of this Little Ice Age is what they call it. And it's so the areas cause the trees to grow slower and denser, which is how you ended up with better violins, as a side note for everyone listening. But as far as the Little Ice Age goes, I mean, we don't look back usually and talk that between 1650 and 1850, that it was really crappy weather and that it was super cold. The So I don't know. There have been periods, I guess, even in our recent time, that were disparate and not typical. For everyone listening, that is the train going by again. So that is the untypical, typical stuff that we do live with. So there is no consensus, I guess, here about when the Little Ice Age started, but you have 300 years that were really damn cold.
Yeah, I mean, we heard stories about that from our grandparents, right? How they had to walk to school in 10 feet of snow with
Yes,
with their little
you know,
moccasin shoes. Like,
it was uphill both ways. Don't
I
forget.
just think that I mean, regardless what we do, Yellowstone's gonna blow eventually. So, I mean,
Yeah.
what difference does it make? So enjoy the
Oh,
time you
let's.
have, right? Quit worrying about 100 years from
Well,
now.
I think it's there are nine super. How many super volcanoes? I think there's nine. Uh, uh, yeah, I think that one, of course, is 60 miles in diameter. Oh, nope, nope. Good. Thank you, Google. There's approximately 12 supervolcanoes on Earth. And at least, you know, I guess I remember watching the first time I learned about Yellowstone being a volcanic point. They said that it blows up every 330 to 400,000 years was their estimate. And not a huge fan of that. I was trying to calculate if I was far enough away, where I was in the country. Am I going to be able to walk out of this?
I heard somewhere that it erupted every 200,000 years, and the last time it erupted was about 200,000 years ago.
Oh, of course, there's always the end is nigh.
I mean, you always got to give or take 100 years, right? That's where we're at now.
Um, yeah, I mean, it wasn't what was North America the new continents because it had been. I mean, we know something happened during the Younger Dryas. We know that even if it wasn't solar flares, Robert Schoch has the solar flare idea, but then it was also, it could have been the massive instant uh, the dumping of water from the tops of glaciers, and so that was a theory. And in America, we used to have the camel. The camel's actually from North America, and it got wiped out along with a bunch of like a mini hippo and a giant bear that was terrifying in size, and a number of other. I think we also had a leopard or a cheetah. We had a bunch of things, and the in quotes Clovis people, and everybody disappeared somewhere between that 11.5 and 13,000 years ago. They just boom gone, and then we have nothing but the Great Plains, and that's not entirely true. I'm not saying everyone died. I'm just saying that there was a dramatic change in the environment, and a lot of things just disappeared from the continent, and it wasn't hunting that did it, and it wasn't a particular group of people.
All right. And Amanda asked, does the San Andreas Fault run through Yellowstone? And I can say no, it doesn't. It looks like it pretty much runs from North California to South California. It does not run through Yellowstone there. As you can see, I brought it up on the screen. So let's see if there is a Yellowstone fault. Yellowstone fault line.
I like Ivan's idea about making a guitar because Stradivarius made more than violins. So I do think the wood that he used in general was that choice option. So whether it's a cello or violin, I know the violins are what everybody talks about. So I don't know if he used. I'm sure they use different trees. There's also a mindset with period instruments, and for those that don't know, I did play seriously till I was 21, and I actually still have a Hof violin. I have a German Hof violin, and I enjoyed it very much and play for funsies still. But the instruments there's a very interesting gentleman who actually recreated the Stradivarius sound perfectly for the first time in world history. It's as about, honest to God, it is as important as the Mars landing. His name is John Waddell, and he and two others. He's a violin and an instrument craftsman, and he and a team were able to CAT scan and perfectly duplicate, and not just dupe, but to 9 of the world's greatest Stradivarius experts. 7 of them could not distinguish their instrument, John's instrument, from the actual Stradivarius type instruments. And it's available now. If you would like to buy a Stradivarius that actually sounds like a Stradivarius, you can buy one from John Waddell, whom is a violin and instrument craftsman located in St. Paul, Minnesota. I've actually been able to handle that instrument. There's not just one. He's producing them. And you may not be able to spend millions on a Stradivarius or hundreds of thousands, but by comparison, you can buy one that sounds as good as the actual Stradivarius. This is as big of an accomplishment as going to Mars, and he did it. I think it's crazy. It's been 12 years. I think he did it 12 years ago. There's a big international. It made huge news internationally, but I mean, it's literally like we set a human on Mars for this little ice age that we've been discussing in these events, and then here's a guy who literally recreates a sound that every instrument maker has been trying to do literally for hundreds of years, and John Waddell does it. And anyway, here we go. Let's see. Did you find a fault line?
No, but I actually put fault line in there, and if you could see, there's a lot of pictures on like the initial kill zone, hot ash zone, raining ash. If you're in South Montana or eastern Idaho or western Wyoming, forget about it. You're done. You're over with. And then there's this really neat little graph here that shows, I guess this is where they think that the lava is underneath Yellowstone. You can see that huge thing of lava. Man, what an absolute disaster. Here's another map here with this kill zone, primary ash zone, secondary ash zone. It's pretty much half the country is going to be in big trouble when this thing decides to go. It's really going to be quite the mess. So I just want to say hello to everybody. We have 44 people in here and only 18 likes, so hit that like button. Hello, Blue Chicken. How you doing? Hi, Conflict. Sorry I haven't been around lately. I've seen you around, and I think you, even if you don't catch the shows live, you're always listening to the backlog, I guess. And remember, you guys can always go to conflictradio.net. Do give a call if you want. I did post a number in chat somewhere, and here is the number here if anybody wants to call in. The number is 256-850-4513. You should be able to get through, and it'll ring us here right away. The unscreened, open lines. Anybody can give us a call and chat with us, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. That's why we do these shows. It's always the last Thursday in every month. So if you don't want to call this time, or you're just hearing this show on a record, remember we're always here, I guess about 8 to 8:30 so Eastern time on the last Thursday of every month. We'll always do these, and that's what we're doing now. That's why we're here. So there's a call-in number there, 256-850-4513. Go ahead and call in and and it'll put you right into the switchboard, and we'll get you on the show. So I guess, Jared, I guess we'll get away from the Yellowstone thing and of course the Ice Age thing. We have another story here about the mammoth DNA breaks record for world's oldest sequence. This is a
Yeah,
recent story. You want to tell us about it?
yeah, this is fun. And I think what's really important about it is this is what they say in the article right away. Well, one of the highlight points for me is when they say we've never been able to do anything this old. This wasn't conceivable. This wasn't a possibility a few years ago. And this is important for two reasons. One is we're always going to be able to learn new sciences that are going to change our look at the past, but we have too many corresponding sciences that are not allowed to look at the past, like engineers, like Christopher Dunn, or people with construction backgrounds like myself, and architectural and engineering, where like we talked earlier with everybody that's listening about who built the original pyramids, and we talked a little bit about the structure itself and the indicators of it's being repaired. And here's the DNA record, which is also important because it's not just that it's ancient, it's that it wasn't a possibility. We couldn't do this. This advanced sequencing technology did not exist for us. So here they are going, oh, hey, in the article, they're pointing out that we've now decided that they don't say it like this, but this is what it really comes out to is we've noticed that there were two woolly mammoth strains alive at this time period. It's like, well, you're only establishing that because you have the DNA sequencing now. And prior to that, you just have to take the initial picture of what we have of humanity even 12,000 years ago, which is loincloths, if you could afford it. I'm not sure where you were getting the cloth, or a furry pair of underwear because you made it out of bunnies. And of course, the one woolly mammoth and spears, and that's it. That's early man, 10,000 BC or whatever you want to say. But that's not accurate. Here's a case of using this DNA sequencing, and they found that it's two. Okay, but they don't have a fossil record of two, but they have a DNA sequencing for two now. And when I say fossil record, I mean they may have a bone, but maybe that bone or whatever they have didn't have enough genetic material. Ancient DNA is not processed chemically like current DNA. It's not CSI crime lab stuff where they're able to just take it in like anything else. They have to process it differently. So here, this is good news because you got a new view, and the paradigm can start shifting. Now it seems really stupid and funny, but you have a picture of cavemen trying to take down a woolly mammoth, but now you could have two woolly mammoths trying to be taken down, but then now they look different, or they're slightly different, like a different kind of cow. Like, is it Jersey? Is it your black and white, classic milking cow? Is it a brown cow? It's a completely different chain. And so how many more, there's the question. It's like, how many other varieties of any particular animal, but also we have varieties of the human genome. Right now we know that there's a 14% mystery ancestor. We got Denisovan, Neanderthal, and a 14%, we're not sure, mystery. But they're not even saying if it's one or more than one, or even if Denisovan or Neanderthals were involved, which they are genetically, we still don't know how many varieties of them there were. And then we have some people that I just can't stop talking about, which are the Paracas in Peru, which are also similar to elongated skulled people found in Russia. They're found in Europe. They're found in every continent, basically, that we've found ancient civilizations. We found not pressed, boarded, elongated, alien-looking skulled people, but they're everywhere. And guess how much genetic testing we've done with them? Like 0. And they won't do it because it's going to change. So here we have this woolly mammoth, and it seems there's a couple things I want everybody to pay attention to about this. One is, it's great. We found out that there's more than one kind of woolly mammoth. And this is a sample from a creature found in the 1970s, okay? This is the Russian Academy of Science in Moscow. It's, the woolly mammoth has been sitting there. They found it in 1970 and they've just sequenced it. So that should give you some idea about how long it takes for this science to crawl along. And that's good and bad. But now I think with all these questions in front of all of us right now about our origins and that the story of us is just not adding up to this lineal, we used to be not very bright and here we are with all this technology and doing a YouTube show. I don't think that's the case. This is a case where they're excited to put this together. And what I wanted everybody to pay attention to is that if they just start doing DNA sequencing on animals that are safe, like everyone takes their kid to see a woolly mammoth at the Natural History Museum, there's always woolly mammoths or saber-toothed tigers. You can name them all off. Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops. I mean, a pterodactyl. You don't get a lot of pteranodons, damn it. But,
So in all honesty, Jared, how long before we can actually clone a woolly mammoth? Because I don't know about you, but I want a woolly mammoth steak, man.
see, of all the places to go, I'm thinking Jurassic Park. Like we should clone them to make food for T-Rexes when we start full on Jurassic Park.
I think it'd be awesome to clone the woolly mammoth. Honestly, we should do it. See if we could do it. I think that would be so awesome. Let's release them in Alaska.
Oh my gosh, we could partner Ruth Crisp Mammoth House instead of Texas Roadhouse.
There you go.
We could do.
We can call it
like the Mammoth Roadhouse. It's like, what do you want to print in your 3D organic printer? I want mammoth tonight.
Yeah. Well, why not?
No problem with it, except that I always wonder if we recode something like this, do we reintroduce or reactivate a dormant virus or bacteria? I mean, theoretical, of course, right?
But, well, I mean, honestly, can we create a virus just by cloning an animal?
I don't think specifically, but you've got to think that if you genetically, like every organic living thing has an enemy, and it's like essential oils, which are products made of plants that are part of the plant's defense system against bacteria and fungus, which is why all essential oils are antibacterial and antifungal. And then some have even more additional properties depending on what you use them for, whether it's just for rashes or actual ailments. And I mean, there's a crap load you can do, but what happens when you breathe something back and it has a particular chemical and muscle makeup, and does it do the factory glands of this animal create anything with just a slight enough variant that a standard bacteria virus today can mutate with that particular creature and turn back into mammoth AIDS? I don't know.
Do you know how big they really were? How tall they really were? Have you ever looked into like how big they are? I mean, obviously they're bigger than an elephant, right? I would imagine that they're bigger than an elephant, if I'm guessing.
So,
right?
Yeah,
maybe somebody could tell me.
So we I wanted to throw this out at everybody.
I mean, I guess I can't really Google a picture of a mammoth. I mean.
So I only skipped this because I knew it had been. All right, so check this out quick before we get to pull up a picture for scale. But I wanted you to hear this. I just pulled this up quick. Technically, it's already been done. The Pyrenean ibex or ibex or bucardo recently became the first extinct animal to ever become unextinct, at least for 7 minutes. The cloned fetus, which contained reanimated DNA from the last known living Pyrenean ibex, was successfully brought to term after being implanted in the womb of a living domestic goat. Although the ibex died of lung difficulty 7 minutes after birth, the breakthrough paved the way for cloning preservation programs of extinct species. The last known Pyrenean ibex was a female named Cecilia, who was killed by a falling tree in 2000. It was her DNA that was used to create a short-lived clone. So now, that's not exactly the longest dead thing, but
It doesn't look like they're that much bigger than regular elephants. I mean, here's one here with people next to it as a comparison, I suppose. And they have a lot of these skeletons they've put back together. Now there's I guess that's a Paleoloxodon nabaricus, whatever
well,
that is. That's a big elephant, of course, but that doesn't look like a woolly mammoth. You know, whenever I see pictures of these woolly mammoths, it reminds me of that Star on Star Wars, those
yeah,
that big thing that came and picked up those
sand people.
the Sand People Road, right?
The poor elephant that had to wear that damn costume. You know, I think about new things now.
Yeah, it looks like I've got one here next to a man standing. It doesn't look like it'd be that much bigger. I say we clone these things. I mean,
Yeah,
at least one of them.
yeah, no problem. You know, and that's the other thing. We don't have to. I think that's one of the ideas around growing meat in labs, i.e., printing it. The idea is to not grow an actual sentient animal, but just if you want to eat the meat, grow the meat.
Well, I don't know about 3D printed mammoth meat. That's a little different than actually cloning the woolly mammoth. But I think maybe we should start with some of the things that have kind of died off that wouldn't be that big of a threat. You know, how about the Black Panther? There's not many of them around anymore.
A snuffleupagus, distorted realities. Like reminds me of snuffleupagus. I think you're right. I mean, here's the thing. When we get down to programming genes, when we get to the singularity that Ray Kurzweil was talking about, you could create a woolly mammoth. You could create a snuffleupagus. You could be printing purple Sesame Street snuffleupagus meat.
All right,
Just
so
saying.
Ivan says they found a new species of elephant in the Indian jungle. So I'm going to look that up real quick. Jared, why don't you tell us a little bit about saber-toothed tiger? Do we have any DNA from those things?
Yeah, we do. In fact, I think I wanted to see if we had actually like started working on it because I keep waiting for them to just make the mistake of actually making one of these things enough to like start breeding. De-extinction. That's actually a topic on Wikipedia now. De-extinction. Where do you work? I work at the de-extinction program. Well, what are you bringing back? Well, we have a pool. Who gets to decide what comes back first? I'm not a fan, though, of bringing back, these scientists that are doing core samples deep in the Arctic going, scientists playing with ancient bacteria and viruses. It's like, do we not have enough living examples of why that's a bad idea? Do we need something beyond the Andromeda strain? Do we need to do 28 days again?
I'm not seeing that link for the new species of elephant that's found in India, but I mean, I'm on Google. I might have to go to DuckDuckGo and get some real results.
Hey, I got a question for you about while I'm looking up the Siberian tiger thing. Oh gosh, Japanese scientists make breakthrough in cloning a woolly mammoth. They discovered a 28,000-year-old woolly mammoth and showed signs of, yeah.
I don't think they should populate Japan with woolly mammoths. That might not be a good idea.
Yeah, I feel like they're going to need to work on hay or
Yeah, maybe go
whatever.
somewhere else. I think Alaska, or put them up in Greenland or something, right? I mean, wouldn't that be their natural habitat? I'd imagine they're woolly because it's cold.
Well, I just want to know your concept. If you're going to eat a woolly mammoth burger, I want to know, do you want them to be cloned back and roam the lands and hunted down like in a kill situation? Is that how you prefer your woolly mammoth meat?
I don't know. I just want to try it.
See, and I just said we could just gently clone it, and you're like, no, bring it back. Take it down.
Maybe work
So-
on Fukushima first, Ivan says. That's Japan should do.
No, Ivan. No, that's where we're going to nuclear it. It's got to go in a very big oven.
So maybe we should clone the woolly mammoth near Fukushima and then have like some radioactive cloned woolly mammoth.
Oh, that all sounds like bad ideas that any government could back and give us lots of money for.
Yeah, right.
See,
If we could sneak it in the stimulus bill, they won't notice.
Oh my gosh. So it looks like especially with the CRISPR Cas9 revolution, that has researchers debating seriously about what we should seriously bring back to the planet. The woolly mammoth is at the forefront, and a closer relative of the elephant that lived in the Arctic, and of course the passenger pigeon, a small gray bird.
Wait, the
Uh,
passenger pigeon is extinct? I didn't know that.
uh, it vanished apparently. The last mammoth died supposedly about 4,000 years ago. The passenger pigeon vanished around 1900.
Huh.
Wow, I have no idea. No idea.
Isn't that
Wow.
the? Well, no, I guess that's not the pigeons they used to send messages back and forth because they used them a lot in World War One. So
Apparently they weren't using that one.
yeah, it wasn't that one they were using, right?
Let's say we're rolling it, and it was a mummy.
Now, I guess this whole cloning thing. I mean, we could talk about the cloning thing for a long time. I mean, do you think that they should even clone anything
I don't think we're far
or
enough along
mixes of
to
things?
races.
Well, not people. I'm just talking about like maybe I guess somebody was talking in the chat a little bit ago about how they're, making these big bunnies now and that they're messing with DNA and everything else. I mean,
Oh,
what if
I brought
they
up the big bunnies. The Russians did it. Yeah, have you seen these bunnies? They bred them to breed for feeding because they grow fast, and they, of course, you can make a lot of bunnies, but they're like as big as people. They're over
but
100 pounds.
they do it with dogs and cats, right? Like you got to half this, half that dog,
Yeah,
half
they're
this, half that
yeah.
cat.
We've been cows, horses, ponies. How the hell do you think we got a mule? I mean, in quotes naturally screwing with genetics with all of our domesticated animals, not just cats and dogs, but every single thing that we've ever decided to force breed into each other. We are responsible. Humankind has been messing with the biology on this planet forever.
Yeah, I just don't see, I mean, I guess you can understand. I suppose we start talking about. I think I was reading somewhere about how they're mixing humans with pigs or something. Is that a real
Uh,
thing?
I think they're trying to, well, so pigs are really close to us, so they've been like some people have gotten pig hearts. They've done like when you asked what to bring back first, the first thing that came to mind is the instances where they've grown ears or noses or parts on a pig. They've done that on other animals and on people themselves. They've been able to regrow parts of your body on someone's body. And I think that's still a very primitive technique. But when you talk about what to bring back first or what to grow, I honestly think we should focus on the human replacement program, as in the uh, being able to maintain ourselves and not degrade. There seems to be just no reasoning why our programming at the mitochondrial level switches, why the DNA and the mitochondrial, the electro, just the electronic switching at the cellular level, why we go old or fall into disrepair or take longer. And then I think our primitive solutions are, well, we'll grow right now. We're growing hearts, we're growing ears, noses, some other elements within the body. We're working on those replacement materials, and we're grafting skin. We have some, I think, really primitive techniques, but I think in the future it's going to be more complex.
Yeah. Well,
And
we're 3D printing skin, aren't we?
yeah, and they're working with collagen, which is a basic foundation for not having, if you print a heart or something, it'll just melt. You need to have the fundamental building blocks within a cellular system for them to have something more complex, like a giant organ. Well, it needs to have things that hold it up, basically like cellular bones, I guess you could call it. And so being able to print it in a structure that won't fall apart is part of the process. And they're getting there. They're getting there exponentially. I mean, it's crazy what they're able to do. But then what if you could just send in nanobots eventually and just continue to enter a single cell and either repair the cell's instruction code at that level or at a another level, it's well, we can't do that yet, but we can start at the end of. I've just been talking recently about Bassett's work. There's a orthopedic surgeon in New York that wanted to experiment. Right now, the most advanced electrotherapies for growing bone, where you've been in a horrible crash or something, and normally it was a bone break that was so severe they were not going to be able to reattach it, and it would require a limb removal or something. Some of the things that they experimented with animals first, implanting electrodes and recreating a magnetic current that seemed to be the correct current for healing the wound. Well, then they've advanced where one of the things that they tried was surgically removing salamander limbs, which they then, of course, salamanders evolutionarily can grow them back. Well, then frogs evolutionary cannot grow them back. But one of the ways that they've developed these techniques over the last few years, and this is really science in the last 40 years, is they had surgically, I know we're talking about actual experiments, this really happened. They removed surgically a frog's limb and then measure the magnetic current and aurora around that area, and they know that this stuff has to do with magnetism, energies, waves, frequencies, that this whole subject, vibrational medicine. And so what they figured out was, okay, a frog can't grow back its leg, but what they did was they measured the magnetic field that was around the wound area and what was going on with the salamander while it grew it back. Well, they stimulated, after surgically removing the frog's leg, they stimulated that same response, and lo and behold, they got frogs to grow back limbs based on the magnetic frequency that they stimulated at the end of the frog's leg. And so, yes, this is the scratching the surface of a million TED Talks everybody out there may have listened to about the placebo effect and why it doesn't always make doctors feel good that you can actually mindfully destroy a cancer or a bug or heal from something that you weren't supposed to heal from. The placebo effect is it just this, they don't want it, they don't want it to be prayer or magic or they just can't believe that the placebo effect works. So here, I think this ties into a larger narrative that we discuss in so many episodes and don't have time, that there's a possibility that as we understand waves and frequencies again and the magnetic aurora around us, like the Carillion photography where you take a picture with a special film and you can actually see the magnetic energy around a human being. They experimented with this even back in 1940 with Burr, and they could see that every creature has a unique signature and it looks a certain way. When you have cancer, if you get sick, it changes and they can see it in the aurora. And it's right now it's considered woo-woo or magic, and that's not true. It's been around a long time, and there's some serious scientists doing a lot of serious work, and there's some really serious, crazy stuff going on. So whether it's a saber-toothed tiger or whether or not we're growing back our limbs right now in the backs of pigs or whatever else, I think it's super exciting to be alive right now, because if you take care of yourself, we're very close to being able to, we are so close to being able to repair pretty much any issue indefinitely.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Oh, I'm super excited about it because it means you can keep smoking on Annam forever and not have lung cancer.
Well, I was reading an article that said as soon as Biden ends this whole coronavirus thing, he's going to end cancer.
Yeah, okay, everybody keep wishing on that one.
I read it. It was in CNN. That's what I read. He's focusing on he's going to end cancer forever as soon as he takes care of corona. Or I guess can I even say that word? Or
I don't think so. I think you need to, like you already said it.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't say it again. And Jared, I guess you guys in the chat room, what do you want to talk about? What do you want us to look up? We've got, I guess about 50 people in here. Hit that like button if you can. It definitely helps get more people in here to get engaged with us. There is an open lines number if anybody wants to call. It's 256-850-4513. And Jared, it doesn't look like we're getting any calls this week. Or I guess this month. We tried this a month ago, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. It has been a while, and people are used to the veil of the internet, and getting online and making a call, that is kind of a tough one, though. It is a challenge. I mean, here's the other thing. The whole point, and I talk about self-experimentation a ton, but this history is all of ours. These mysteries are all of ours. Everyone has different ailments and issues that they would like corrected or changed, and a lot of times we don't look at those until we're sick. But proactively speaking, we're out here looking for, what's the biggest global, galactic, and universal picture of ourselves and the universe and how it all works. And wherever your questions are at right now, we cover the whole point of Conflict Network is to have some conflict. So feel free to call in and not discuss any politics.
Or you can just put your question in the chat, and we'll get it that way too. I know a lot of people like doing it that way, and that's a lot of fun with you guys. We weren't going to do this anymore because we haven't been getting any calls, but we realized that, I mean, there's a ton of you in the chat room always asking questions and talking with us in the chat, and that's why we continue it. I mean, if you don't want to call, that's totally fine. Just say hi in the chat box, and let's see here. Adonye says, "Does a clone have a soul?" That's a fascinating question, Jared. What do you think?
I don't
I mean,
think
do we have souls, right?
so. There's a particular, yeah. Well, so there's a particular kind of twin, like not just identical, but essentially clones. But this is the scary part about the more research I'm doing into vibrational medicine and into some of these weird anomalies of what happens not just around wounds and cancer treatments and these electromagnetic therapies is that it's very complex electronic switching, the same kind of switching that happens in what we think of as machines. And one of the things, the big mystery here is we identify technology as something external or something that's implanted, or we think of nanobots now. We understand that to a point. We don't look at things that we call natural and realize that this might be a very, 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 very advanced computing, and that a clone would be just as real as another person because they're standing there and they might be identical copies of the next person, but everyone has that same, everyone has their own magnetic aurora, their own field of energy that's around them and in them, and the switching and the cells, they live and they die independently. Remember, we're all different people. There's nothing within the human body that's not been 100% switched out. Think about this. You don't see grandma for a year. The new grandma you see at Christmas next year is literally a different grandma. Every cell in the body has been replaced. You, yourself, and grandma are meeting two new people, yet you're the same person. So where does your soul live? To answer two questions at once.
Yeah, and Blue Chicken says, "Is there proof of the existence of a soul?"
Well, there's that ounce theory.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or
yeah,
seven
so the
7 grams or something, right? In it, like that, something like that.
yeah and that experiment's been attempted to be repeated, and it has not been able to be duplicated well, and I'm not sure how that is. And for me, I've tried to calculate out, just not having done the experiment, is it because, is that like post water weight? Did they keep that person and everything in them contained on a system that did not change weight? And are they really sure? Because it's such a small amount. Is it really, did they lose fluid, or, is there just was there just enough? I don't know.
Well,
Variation.
what about the camera that takes pictures of your aura?
Yeah, the Correllian photography, and that I don't think it's ever been combined. That would be interesting. Do Correllian photography before death and during and after. Because again, the Correllian image looks different if you're sick, if you have cancer, if you just have a cold. It doesn't matter. If you are being ailed by something, the photography, the imaging does change. And there are a number of theories about how to read that. And everything has it. The magnetic fields, Burr in 1940 was doing the research on the magnetic fields of salamanders and then comparing it to unsprouted seeds and unfertilized eggs. And no matter what the creature was, whether it's going to be a plant, whether it's going to be a person, a salamander, the babies or the unfertilized eggs or the seeds had the same magnetic aura of the adult of what the image was. And in fact, there's the leaf experiment where they cut off a third of a leaf and the aura shows the portion that's cut off that it's still there, even though it's not. Kind of like the whole, if you lose a limb and there's that phantom limb theory that you have, that sensation, and like growing back the salamander leg and then having the frog grow it back. It's the cells know what the full holistic Correllian image is of that, whatever it is. So it does beg the question, can we grow back or regenerate or handle whatever defect we're accidentally mutating within us? I mean, is it all internal or is it also an external force of waves and frequencies that we do not want to be around? You know?
Yeah, I think we have a soul. I do. I guess it comes down to what you believe, really. I suppose some people might argue that it's impossible for consciousness to continue after death. Once you're dead, that's it. That's it. I hate that idea. At least if you believe that you have a soul, you at least have hope that there's a continuation of some kind. I guess Mr. Fox asked reincarnation, and I'll go ahead and throw in there. I'm not sure. The Indians believe that if you cremated the body after death, that your memories would be intact. You could be born again. When you're born again in your next life, you have the memories of your old one. And if you are buried, if they just bury you, then your soul will start anew, or you won't start anew, I guess, but you won't have the memories of that life. What do you think? What do you think of reincarnation, Jared?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think all the post-flood, Younger Dryas cultures have these slivers of truths, and this is a very interesting topic for me because I do think it goes back to that shared genetic memories and the idea that we have a collective human consciousness. We've talked about it with Olaf Phillips on some of our past episodes, and the idea that not only do we share collective consciousness, and that means can connect either to others or even externally, that Correllian photography with that image of our aurora, that maybe even some of our thoughts and ideas are stored within that bubble that, in quotes, makes each of us. But one of the things I theorized for a long time about is when you think of a past life and you go, oh, I was Cleopatra. Well, why weren't you Bill, the poop scooping guy at the Roman Zoo? Why were you Mark Antony? And then there are some people in post-paranormal past life regressions. They will say, I was a farmer, or I was a doctor, I was someone simple. I wasn't the Emperor of Rome or anything. I was just someone else. But is that they were them, or is it that they were reincarnated, or is the sliver of truth in reincarnation that as we develop back the populations on Earth that I think used to be here, is it that we're building up the RAM, the collective consciousness and memories, not of a past life, but actually of the capability of storing everybody who's ever lived? And is it possible that we can actually reintroduce them into the population because we're really creating a giant organic zip file that may extend in the idea of reincarnated? People are like, well, I could come back. Oh, but it has to do, the mystification is, well, it has to do with whether or not you're good. So you might come back as a frog, or you might repeat yourself as a human. So there's all these, we're not getting specifically into the structured belief system of reincarnation, but I'm just saying that the sliver of truth is maybe the full weight of a terraformed planet with engineered soil, like I'm talking about, and It's Not Aliens, It's Us. Isn't that the idea that all human beings or creatures they're storing a packed version of each of us that could be reintroduced to a body, and we think of it as a natural, like random. Well, if I die, I could come back as either as a creature, but maybe it's just that until we reactivate the store slash technology slash, I don't want to say it's a pyramid system, but until we reactivate that science, we're not going to be able to download that person back into a new body. And so collectively, I don't think there's any way that we're just this random organic mess that dies and never comes back. I don't want to say that to be romantic and true or not to be sad. I think there's enough sensations for each of us, even just hanging out now. There's no way we are just a single entity that has one chance, one life. We might have only one existence this time to do what we're doing this time, and we should develop and make the best of it. But I just don't think that we're just random amino acids that used to be swamp goo, and then now we're going to die, and that's it.
Yeah,
And
and I don't think it's fair to just judge if there is a soul, which I believe in, I don't think it's fair to judge a soul on just one life. I mean, every life should have different circumstances to where that soul can be measured. I don't think you should judge a soul in just one life, right? I mean,
no,
if we're even going to be judged at all, I suppose.
No, and Mr. Fox brings up about crypto and quantum computers work and biological quantum computers. And this is something that you guys have heard me, or some of you maybe heard me go on and on about this, and definitely we have on Conflict. But I talk about Qigong, an Eastern practice, and I bring up a guy named Johnny Chong who was filmed starting paper on fire. He could direct electrical current, and he could heal people. And now Qigong doesn't manifest the same way for every person, but it's a very ancient, again, is it that it's just an ancient Chinese practice, or is it an ancient Eastern practice, or is it that it's an ancient practice that was once part of our conscious memory of how to maintain ourselves, but like the 5 guys that remembered it during the last catastrophic event ended up in China, now it's their thing. But the reason I bring up Johnny Chong and Qigong is that and the electromagnetic current and his ability to actually force, control, and direct the electrical current within him and heal and pass that current to another person, which was video. There's multiple documentaries about it. A book was written about it. The documentarian who did it and wrote the book became a student. And one of the things, there is scientific work that shows nuclear cold fusion going on at the mitochondrial DNA. And that's one of the explanations about how they're directing the current. And when I said electrical switching, I mean like ones and zeros. I'm saying that at the cellular level, we're talking about electronic switching, like in a computer, to store memory. So whether it's, nuclear cold fusion within mitochondrial DNA or cellular electronic switching or both, we are talking about mainstream academic investigations that are not obscure one-off papers by somebody who got high. These are deep scientific researches that are showing complexities in the human body, but also, again, we have engineered soil all over the earth. This is ancient, not just for growing. I don't think I stress that enough, that ancient engineered soil is not primarily as much of it that was on Earth. I don't think it was about growing crops and corn. I think they had moved past 3D printing and were doing something else for sustenance. But I do think that the connectivity of the planet, the piezoelectric nature of cellular electronic, by the way, it's piezoelectric electronic switching going on at the cellular level for that whole growing limbs and repairing broken bones. Magnetic therapies that the ones that we just discussed and this other stuff, it is a quantum level activity that we're discussing, and it's really not been well I think explained.
Yeah.
But we call it reincarnation, we call it it all ties into all of it, collective human consciousness.
It's definitely very neat stuff. Aceto Shaman asks, if the difference in size between a Planck unit and an atom is equivalent to the difference between a human and the universe, what do you expect to find as our knowledge of quantum physics improves?
I missed the first part of the question. It broke up. What was it again?
All right. If the difference in size between a Planck unit, I guess I'm saying that right. Huh? What, baby? Planck unit and an atom is equivalent to the difference between a human and the universe, what do you expect to find as our knowledge of quantum physics improves?
All I can picture is Monty Python going, a lot. um,
Yeah.
I like
Now,
well, tying into that, Ivan's next statement about the heart puts off a toroidal field that surrounds the body within 6 feet. That whole thing, there is a guy, and I know there's another half to his point, but that toroidal field and the complexity of the, I'm not going to say, I'm going to say it, but nobody get off. I'm going to say sacred geometry, but just, it's not my sacred cell phone. This is not my sacred microphone. The toroidal field and the way that the heart pumps and moves, and it got Victor Schauberger back to vortexes and implosion versus explosion and all that. The Dave Winters has a few documentaries. He's a scientist, writer. Dave Winters' work on that toroidal fields in reference to the human heart and in reference to that those energy fields, people should look up. We should, man, if that guy's still around, we should maybe talk to Dave Winters. I don't know if he's. This is so sad. I don't know if he's alive or not. I think he's around, but that's actually very interesting work. And so back to the Max Planck unit and an atom. As far as to really answer the question, here's what I think is coming up for solutions to the actual question of what are we doing with quantum computing? What are we doing with spintronics? I would encourage everyone. I have nothing to do with Science Daily, but personally, I love watching anything they have a whole section on spintronics. And the reason I like spintronics, it ties directly to Cito's question. And what I love about spintronics are everything there is dealing with working out quantum switching. How are you going to have a quantum computer at room temperature? How are you going to work out these speeds and have actual, not just ones and zeros, but the whole point of quantum is that you don't just have an on and off. You have more settings. For, again, the electron is a theoretical particle. It's a unit. It's a unit of measurement. It's not, forget that. The point is that we mapped out how to build a quantum computer. We actually mapped out the circuitry for it. An Australian team did that. And it's been, I feel like I'm an official time warp because of stupid last year. So I was going to say a year, but 2 years ago, the news came out that an Australian team had finally mapped out what we need to do to create a quantum computer. And the architecture is very important to lay out how does the switching and the fundamental mechanics work. But then the next part is, what do you use for storage? What are your conductors? And in this case, graphene conductors. So the latest, I hope this doesn't sound am I just being too big of a geek? Should I just?
No, go ahead.
The point is that they need to be able to store the information. It needs to not fail. Quantum computers used to last, 0, then they lasted a few seconds, then they lasted 30 seconds, then they lasted a minute, then they lasted 5. And I swear by the time they lasted 5, suddenly they lasted an hour, and suddenly they were holding memory and being stable for like 2-3 hours, and then they were up to 6, and then it's crazy what's exponentially going on with quantum computing itself. This isn't just a question then of are they going to be able to create a quantum computer? It's when it's going to come out. So this is kind of like being around the ARPANET. There's no internet on the table. There's no personal computers. Everyone's typing on a Casio. And then for those of you who don't know, then one day Apple comes out with this computer and everyone's going to have one, but nobody knows what to do with it. But the product came out, and then it was less than 28 years later, we had these crazy cell phones. I think we're going to go from a quantum computer that's incredibly unpractical. I would think in the next 20 years, the kind of leap we're going to make with quantum computing is also the leaps we're making with nanotechnology. So we already had Wi-Fi enabled nanobots. So I think you're going to see a quantum computer that's going to control nanobots that if you want, and again, not to terrify everyone, but for bad people, it means creating nanobots that act as viruses to go attack anything they want.
Yeah,
Or
we start talking about some pretty scary stuff now.
Yeah, because if you don't get your upgrade now from Norton, I'm not saying Norton, I'm just saying,
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, like any virus company, you'll have a biological virus update. That's going to be terrifying because you could send out nanobots to do, and this is all theorized in The Singularity is Near with Ray Kurzweil, but the reality is it's true. You could create nanobots that don't like dogs. They don't like chihuahuas. And you could literally blow the dust in the air. And nanofactories are as small as 80. I think the smallest ones are 80 something atoms to 150, and that's very small. And obviously, they can make them smaller, but those are able to produce other nanobots that can then just fly around and then create more nanofactories, which create more nanobots, which means you have to have something that can counterman that.
We're gonna get into a situation where they're gonna be putting nanobots in our food, man.
Right. So herein lies the issue. It's like, would you not want a quantum cell phone that had the ability to scan for those kind of threats, or in my case, I would think it would be cool to have like contacts that had that kind of nanotechnology where you're just being able to onboard and immediately see in front of you, like, hey, that's not a safe zone, or in your routes planning on your car, it's like, hey, there's a carjacking zone over here that you can just tell that the city's clearing out these bad nanobots. So it's going to be it's
interesting stuff, that's for sure. Hot Sauce wants to know, when you guys aren't doing a show, who are some of your favorite YouTube researchers or channels?
Well, who do you like to go to?
Well, I like watching, if I have time, I'm just sitting around or something, I've got a Roku, so I'm on YouTube all the time, and we're always watching like American Unearthed or, the History Channel. I love the American Unearthed that I guess they've got on YouTube, on the History Channel on YouTube. That I watch those all the time with Scott Walter, and I guess sometimes like if I'm just watching just to watch, maybe Truth and Art TV or Patriot Street Fighter or Bards FM or something. I don't know. I guess I'll throw those out there and let you guys do the math. What do you like, Jared?
So was it specifically for YouTube?
I guess so.
Who are your favorite researchers?
Or YouTube researchers or channels? So YouTube.
Yeah, so I like little newer on the scene, but does incredible documentaries is Ben Uncharted X. So it's Uncharted X. The guy who created his name is Ben. And so Uncharted X is one. I think that for me, for raw research and, when you can't get to a site, Brian Forster is just pounding out the raw footage. So you're not going to get a really well-told kickback story although he does do full lectures and there are more complex productions, but Uncharted X, I generally like to go to Forrester's channel. Then as far as research goes, who else? Well, I like raw stuff like Vlad. Let's see, let me get this one right. Vlad VNT, I think, is it? It's let me look it up. Vlad. Yeah, Vlad 9VT. Vlad 9VT. This guy is Ukrainian and he does crazy. He doesn't speak English, so he has a translator. So there's there's definitely captions, but mostly his videos are raw footage of megalithic structures all over the earth. And once you watch a good majority of what he shows you all around the world, and he finds the old stuff. He goes and digs out paleoanthropological reports, archaeological lithographs, things from old literature from the 1800s, and it'll just be set to music and in good classic Ukrainian dance club music. So it's some of it's really awesome. Otherwise, just turn it down and just look at the videos. They're incredible. I might be interviewing him in the upcoming weeks. I finally got a Ukrainian translator, but I love his stuff.
There you go.
So, yeah.
All right. Adone, or Adone, I hope I'm saying your name right, asks, what about hooking sensors up to plants and fake punching them and the plants flinching like they knew they were about to get hit?
Oh, yeah. All that research about plants. And then I write about a researcher in my book Susan in Washington State. They were doing research and they found that plants scream. Like you can actually hear it. It's at a decibel level. They talk. They actually scream. And then you got Peter Mulholland's work, The Secret Life of Trees, the way that different even brands of trees connect and complement in their root systems. They share nutrients. They share information. They share almost like a pheromone testosterone sense through a forest trees. Plants have a similar network and complementary also to biological systems, bacterial and fungal, that connect between the plants and the trees. The system of the planet and its connectivity to each other just does not seem random. It's super trippy. We could,
it's fascinating stuff, isn't it, with plants? I was just, Adone, he mentioned a question. It reminded me of a movie I was watching, I guess, where there was some tough guy or something, and he had a bunch of plants in this one room, and he would go in there and yell at them. And if one of them made a brown leaf or a spotted leaf or something, he took it and he would like torture it and crumple it up and shove it down in disposal and stuff, and it scared the other plants, and they're like growing really pretty and nice. I don't know what movie that was. If anybody's in here can read that. I thought that was...
Yeah, what was that?
I got a kick out of that.
Yeah, the Mozart or Metallica, the intent, again, Dr. Emoto's work, Schauberger's work, Gronder's work, all of it about the intent either behind what you're doing to the plant or water. That's the other thing. Is it the plant itself, or is it the water? Is it the actual physical vibration, or is the intent of what you're throwing at the plant, or like the rice experiment with the water? And
I guess I gotta get caught up. I was pretty behind on the chat here. This show rocks. I am learning so much shit. Healing with magnets comes to mind. Dave Winters, thank you. Mr. Fox, what about every cells create an electrical output? We are mini nuclear reactors. If you consider the amount of cells in the body, please mention.
Yeah, I have the actual paper mentioned in my book for the nuclear cold fusion of the cold fusion that they say is taking place at the mitochondrial level of DNA, and then the piezoelectric electronic switching that's known within electromagnetic therapies that they're using for those extreme breakages and wound healings. And that's even just like they could do a cast and they could do the current while you sleep, and those currents, those negative charges are being administered even, just not even by doing an internal wire, a temporary, like a internal stitch that has to be pulled out. They're doing really cool stuff. That Qigong stuff that I was telling you about, it's in that section for the nuclear cold fusion. And then way too long to repeat on air for
all right,
I don't know.
Blue Chicken wants to know, what is your definition of a quantum state?
Oh boy. So So I'm a huge fan for everyone out there. You want to know something else I watch and everybody should go check out and specifically work on magnetism and exactly this. Ken Wheeler. He's called the Angry Photographer, but he's also, it took me hours to decide whether or not he was brilliant or not. And bear with me here because he's a huge fan of photography. So there's a bunch of stuff on his YouTube channel for photography, but specifically there's a bunch of stuff exactly on this topic and about what magnetism really is and what we're going to say in reference to, in quotes, a quantum state. And what we're really discussing and what Ken Wheeler, I think, describes really well for everyone is the cult of bumping particles, the fuzzy hair crackpot Einstein versus Tesla and Steinmetz and J.J. Thomson, who is the guy who created the electron, and he didn't even think it was an electron. He thought it was a measurable state of energy, not a particle, but he got a Nobel Prize, I believe, so he kind of switched his mind on that, and it wasn't really they switched his mind. But either way, Ken Wheeler's work describes very well what magnetism really is. Describing something that it does is not explaining what it is, and it all ties into vibrational frequency, medicine / the state of being, what we are. We're matter and energy, and of that, are we a particle, or are we these toroidal fields? Are we the model of the atom itself is changing? So if we're going to describe prior in the way I grew up learning, like if I'm quoting out of In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, which is actually a book, you can look that up in Schrodinger's Cat. Those are great books on the history of physics and getting through some of the basics here, even though they're dated. I think they're really useful. And so what are we going to say?
Yeah, well, I guess I could say that, let's see here. Ivan says, I see a chance for a golden age again. We could heal the planet and all disease with these technologies. What a world that would be. Yeah, if we weren't in such competition with each other, I agree, but it's too bad, it's a dog-eat-dog world, I guess.
Yeah.
Blue Chicken says, string theory and quantum theory related to computers. How? Windows was made to sell antivirus software. Nanobots are already in your food, water, everything for years. You're just awakening to this. Love, Deborah. And Aceto says, thanks, Jared. Excellent stuff. Ivan says, yes, ma'am. Cool. Let's see. Looking for another question here. They found nanobots in the chemtrail soup they've been spraying us with. I've seen videos of that chemtrail stuff coming down. Have you seen those videos?
I haven't seen the videos, but I've heard enough now. I do know that there's the whole nano thing and nanoparticles and silver nitrates, or the colloidal silver nanostructures, and I've heard a number of different bad things that they're sticking into these cloud disbursements and applications that they're using for whether it be weather or 5D holographic technology. And I mean, I've heard the gamut, but I don't have the instruments to tell you if it's true. But it's, from what I've seen, it is pretty damn terrifying.
All right. Hello, Dr. Strangelove and B Moss, Distorted Reality. How are you all doing? B Moss here from Huntsville, Alabama. Just so everybody knows, we are based in Huntsville, Alabama. At least Conflict Radio is. Jared's up in Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
And so Ivan, I guess the 100 monkey effect, Mr. Fox says, Ivan says, Morgellons disease. So I guess we're all caught up. And then B Moss says, what's up?
Sup?
So we're all caught up there. The plants thing is still fascinating. There's so much going on. I guess there's a show on Amazon that I wanted to watch about fungi and how plants use it and trees use it to communicate with each other. And it seems fascinating, but I'm not going to rent it. I'm waiting. I think I have it in my watch list for when it's free. I don't like renting shows unless it's like a Avengers or Star Trek or something.
I like money.
So I guess we're all caught up. We're about a minute 40 in, hour 40 in, I suppose. Jared, you want to tell everyone where they can find you, and let's wrap up for today.
Thanks, BMOS. Yeah, I am at notaliens.com. That's where you can get a signed copy of my book where I actually go to the post office and do it. You could spend a few dollars less and go to Amazon. I also have a members area now, which we have a conflict exclusive member deal. So if you do want to become a member, there are exclusive content, things we can't say on YouTube that I had to tell everybody who've listened to us to not talk about because people get banned now. So that special offer is a 40% discount, a conflict bumper sticker, and you can sign up to be a member on notaliens.com, and I will send you two. What is it right now? Are we doing one or two?
To what?
Is it one? It's a book and a conflict bumper sticker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so that's on notaliens.com, and then of course what's our next show coming up that we're going to be doing?
Let's see here. I think it's Monday. We've got Geraldine on how to change our consciousness, right?
How about I get to the right month and not freak out that I'm missing something?
Well,
Yeah, we have DNA programming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's at
DNA
4 o'clock.
DNA programming, that will be 4 o'clock. I've got Steve Stockton scheduled up ahead. Brad Olson's getting ready to come back on. Long Island Bigfoot's going to be joining us on the 4th. We've got Wagner Wallace, Marshall Masters coming up. We're going to talk Planet X and I guess QAnon. But I haven't decided if we're going to put that show on YouTube or not. So you guys might have to miss out on that show. That's going to be an interesting show. The last show we did with Marshall Masters, we had to take down. So we might just do that show in two parts where we have the first part about Planet X, which we'll put on YouTube. And then the show in its entirety we'll put up on Apple iTunes. And then the 25th of March, we have open lines again. And I'm not even going to switch over to April. We are thinking of going to 3 days a week here at Conflict Radio to try to up our content a little bit, to try to put a little bit more stuff out there. So just leave in the comment box below if you'd like to see that. If you're already busy with a ton of other stuff and a lot of people don't want to see that, I guess go ahead and say that too. Just remember, you can always find us at conflictradio.net. You can always find us on Apple iTunes and all of your normal podcast catchers. Just search for Conflict Radio. We are working on a store, and we're going to get that together pretty soon. The website's updated 3 or 4 times a week. And I guess that's going to do it for us. Remember, batten down the hatches and be safe.